We have breaking news at this hour. Congresswoman Jaime Herrera Beutler, Republican Congresswoman, is now publicly confirming her conversation with Kevin McCarthy, in which Kevin McCarthy told her what Donald Trump said to him while the Capitol was being invaded on an angry phone call that Kevin McCarthy had with Donald Trump, where Kevin McCarthy was trying to get Donald Trump to help stop the violence at the Capitol. She has issued a written statement explaining that she has been telling her constituents this actually for several days now, that this is why she voted to impeach the president. She reports that Kevin McCarthy told her that Donald Trump said to him while the attackers were in the Capitol and he was watching it on TV, "Well, Kevin, I guess these people are more upset about the election than you are." Congresswoman Herrera Beutler goes on to say in her written statement, "Since I publicly announced my decision to vote for impeachment, I have shared these details in countless conversations with constituents and colleagues and multiple times through the media and other public forums." She's been doing this back in her district, and so it hasn't been coming to national media attention until tonight. "I told it to the Daily News of Longview on January 17th. I've shared it with local county Republican executive board members, as well as other constituents who asked me to explain my vote. I shared it with thousands of residents on my telephone town hall on February 8th. To the patriots who were standing next to the former president as these conversations were happening, or even to the former vice president, if you have something to add here, now would be the time." Joining our discussion now is Congressman Adam Schiff of California. He's the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, and he served as the lead impeachment manager in the first Senate trial of Donald Trump. And Congressman Schiff, I want to go straight to this statement by Congresswoman Herrera Beutler, and she's challenging people who heard Donald Trump's side of that phone call at the White House, and surely there were several who heard it. She is, in effect, challenging Kevin McCarthy, who was on that phone call, to come out and either say what she's saying isn't true or confirm it. She is really clearly here now, standing on the spot of saying this is what Donald Trump said to Kevin McCarthy, and anyone who wants to challenge that better speak up right now.
Well, I give her a lot of credit for having the courage to speak up about that, and also for her vote on the impeachment in the House of Representatives. But if she's waiting for Kevin McCarthy to show any kind of courage, this is, of course, the same Kevin McCarthy who made that pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago, hat in hand to Donald Trump, and yet again tying his party to that amoral president. So we're not going to be able to count on Kevin McCarthy by any means to do the right thing. But there are other people who would have been witnesses to that conversation who can speak out. And the thing that's unique about this kind of a trial, Lawrence, is that the jurors are not sequestered away. They're not precluded from hearing what people are saying publicly. They can consider that. And so I would hope that others would come forward and would speak out. But given that they have waited as long as they have, and probably those most in the know, like Mark Meadows, are less likely to be candid, I'm not sure how much optimism we should have on that account.
What do you do as an impeachment manager when new evidence like this comes out the night before you've got to go back into the Senate trial? What do you do with this tomorrow?
Well, I think you can, at a minimum, you can incorporate it into your closing arguments. And so you can refer to this. You can refer to these public reports. Counsel on both sides are free to do that. I think it is another important point to bring out. And it's so consistent with the evidence, the mountain of evidence they've already introduced. At the end of the day, the reason why Donald Trump's counsel couldn't answer so many of those questions, couldn't answer why didn't Donald Trump speak out when his own vice president was in danger. The vice president who stood by his side day after day, humiliated himself, degraded himself by standing next to Trump, doing and saying everything Donald Trump wanted him to do and say, until this very last day when he could not ignore the simple constitutional ceremonial duty that he had. The reason why Trump's lawyers couldn't answer that question is because the truthful answer is He did nothing to protect Mike Pence because he didn't care, because he doesn't care. Don't we know that about him after 4 years? There's only one thing he cares about, and that's Donald Trump. And in this case, that meant all he cared about was overturning the election. And if people got hurt, then people got hurt. But all he cared about was himself.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.